This is the Bible Ranger, and we're continuing Evolution versus Creation, episode 88. Is evolution teaching lies in the textbooks? Lies in the textbooks sounds kind of harsh, but evolution has to depend on lies to be viable. And I'll try to prove that to you today. I'll mention a couple of them, but I'll cover one in more detail than the other, not to make this video too long. Now, the first one is the geologic column. If you can have it all in one place, this would be 100 miles thick. I mean, that's huge. I mean, just think about the tallest mountain we have is Mount Everest, and that's only 5.5 miles. So this would be like 19 times taller than Mount Everest, just to have these particular levels of dirt. Okay, for example, everybody knows Jurassic from the movie. Before that is Jurassic, and then we have a bunch of other ones. Okay, but what they do is they assigned a number of millions of years. Like Jurassic would be that anything found in this particular period would be about 180 million years old, and anything in the Cretaceous period would be about 130. And whatever animal they find or fossils they find there, they would give it a date. And the column was made up, but it's become the law defining the age of the actual fossil. Like, you got to realize when you have open dirt, it rains, and you have storms, and you have flooding, and there's erosion going on. So how could you possibly keep the levels without being affected while it's being covered? It doesn't make sense. Where all this material coming from outer space is where's the erosion? Where's the preservation of these fossils? I mean, we have animals out there that even chew on bones for calcium. So science fits with the Bible, but it just doesn't fit with evolution. Next comes the fossil record, which is also a chart that was made up. And this particular chart, they call it the index fossil, which they use it once it was made up to put a particular age on a fossil. And they'll use it as cross-reference to the geological chart, which is a particular depth. And they'll use it against or for each other as circular reasoning, like it's this old because it has a fossil index, and the index is right because it has a particular geological chart depth. But neither one are proven, but they'll use it for each other for proof. And evolution is a theory, but is a theory about a particular fact. And I'm going to give you two examples, okay? Now, there are layers of dirt. There's no question about it. That's the fact, okay? But if you're an evolutionist, you see that it took millions of years for these layers to form. That's the evolutionist view. Now, if you're a creationist, it says that, yep, there was movement of dirt, no question about it, but it was done by a large movement of water, like the flood. And you can make a little experiment where you have a jar, of glass jar, and you can put rocks and pebbles and sand on it with water, and you shake it, and you'll notice it every particular time the heavier particles will go down first, and it'll go into a layer. Okay, this is similar to what would happen in a flood. And when we get to the flood, we'll put that in more of a detail. Now, the other fact is that there was a formation called the Grand Canyon. There is one. Okay. However, if you're an evolutionist, you're saying that the Colorado River made it through millions of years. That little river compared to that huge canyon. Now, if you're a creationist, you said, yup, it was formed quickly with lots of water, like the flood, which we'll bring that up later. Now, the fossil records are a false assumption, like I said before. The fossils form when you have a quick burial of the fossil. Okay, if you have a fossil in the open, I mean, millions of animals die, or hundreds of thousands, whatever it is, die daily, but you don't see fossils being formed because of erosion, the sun, other animals are eating it. So that doesn't prove anything. Okay, you can't prove fossils had kids or different kids. Like I said, all it proves is that it died. That's all it says. The next one we'll spend more time and the most time is biogenetic law. Okay, and it's a theory of development and evolution by Ernest Haeckel. All right, and in 1859, Darwin wrote his book, The Origin of Species. And he said in his book that, if my theory is correct, you should start finding things to support it. Okay, missing links or other things to support it. And after a few years, some people were getting nervous, and Haeckel apparently was one of them. And 10 years later, he came up with several things to help evolution, and one of them was biogenetic law. Now let's get the difference between law, scientific law, and a scientific theory. Now, scientific law can be observed and can be demonstrated, like from math or from observation. You can continue doing it. You can repeat it all the time because it happens. Now, a scientific theory, since none of us were there, you're explaining how could this have happened, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with a theory, okay? It's just pushing the theory as if it is a fact. That's the problem. So it has several names. These are all the same thing. Biogenetic law, ontology, recapitulates, phenology. Sometimes I have trouble saying it, so that's the same thing. And embryology is the other one. And this one I'm not even going to try to say it, but at least they call it a theory. And basically what it is, it's that we all start out similarly because according to evolution, because our origin was from a fish, a type of fish. So we all had like gills, gill slits. And if you notice this drawing, I mean, it's a pretty good drawing. I mean, it looks pretty convincing that all these different animals here all start out the same thing. And I remember seeing that in school, and I was like, wow, that looks pretty good. And I mean, some of these this would be a fish, and this is a turtle here, and this is some kind of pig, I believe. I believe this is a chicken. And it keeps on moving until we become a human here. But I mean, they look pretty close, okay? So when Darwin wrote his second book, he heavily endorsed Haeckel's embryo drawings. And this is what he said. He said, Darwin, by far the strongest single class of facts in favor of his theory. That's pretty heavy endorsement. And explaining the embryos one more time, if it wasn't very clear, when you first start out, all the embryos look pretty similar because that's how we used to look way back when we were fishes, according to evolution. And starting fish-like first, moving into amphibious, reptilian, and then mammals. Okay, and that's what we all have the gill slits in common. Now Haeckel also, he's on a roll. He also made up something called a family tree for mankind, where he's dividing the animals. And you see this all the time in books today, in evolutionary books. But there's one particular one here at the bottom. He is called Monera. And basically, he created an organism. And this organism is the link between living matter and non-living matter. We all know that's an incredible leap from going from dead to living. But this is his answer to it. Evolution is on a roll. They even found a missing link in this short time period. But in 1869, Thomas Higley, he discovered the actual bacteria that Haeckel was actually created on his tree. And he actually called it Bathobus hickelii in honor of Higley. So wow, that's a lot of stuff going on. But 6 years later, this man named John Buchanan, he revealed that what that was found was just calcium sulfate from seawater. And basically, if you don't know what that is, it's basically like eggshells crushed up in powder. That's all it basically is. Now later, Haeckel, he created a missing link called a Pithecanthropus. Right here. There's the drawing that he actually did himself. So he's actually a pretty good artist. And he had the female, and he had a little infant nestled in between the female missing link. And basically, what that means, it means the speechless ape man. So let's review. That's a lot of stuff that Haeckel actually did. In about a 10 years period of time, after Darwin wrote his book, Haeckel created the biogenetic law. He created the family tree for mankind, Monera. He also found the speechless, I should say, the speechless ape man. I mean, wow, that's incredible. That's a lot of finding in a short period of time. But I'm sorry, no, it was all a fraud. Yes, it was all a fraud. All right, Haeckel's lies. In 1874, the embryo drawings were proven false, about 5 years after they actually were, drawn. Now the drawings, the original drawings, they're here, they're on top. Okay, that's Haeckel himself, he drew those, okay? Now bottoms are actual photographs, and you can see there is a huge difference of what they are. Okay, huge difference. Now, though proven false, Darwin continued using it as the most important evidence. And what about the gill slits? Well, no, they're not gill slits, okay? Not gill slits. What they are, they're basically bones for hearing, like the stirrup, the hammer, and the anvil. And the other parts are for thyroid glands. They're all for here, okay? So they're not gill slits at all. But what about the family tree? That was made up. And what about the missing link? That was made up. What about Monera? Proven false in in 1875. So that's a little mistake on my part. 1875. Haeckel's conviction. All right, in 1875, Haeckel was convicted by Jena University for fraud by his professors. And then he confessed that the drawings were from memory. Come on, man, who's going to believe that? You're a professor. That's what's on the record. All right, now, if this was a fraud in time and he got corrected, that's one thing, okay? But what I'm about to show you here, it's something, there's a much bigger problem going on here. I mean, look at some of his confessions here. He said he believed in spontaneous generation. And basically, you have to come up with something like that because you don't have any missing links. So one species or kind would jump into something else without anything in between. Because if that's not true, then it would be necessary to believe in a creator. Oh, you mean God? And if you believe in God, then you have to do what God says, and nobody wants to be accountable to God, okay? And these are just, if you want to pause it and look, these are just other animals in their embryonic stage and how different they actually look in a photograph, not a drawing. Please don't miss this. This is pretty important. After 150 years of being proven wrong, they're still using Haeckel's embryos, his tree, his Monera, and they're still in the textbooks. If it's wrong, if it's incorrect, remove it. I mean, one of Ken Hovind's tapes, I think is either 3 or 4, he shows 50 lies in the textbooks. I've only showed 2 quickly, and I show 1 in more detail, total of 3. I mean, in a time of high tech where even CDs are considered old, they're still showing a drawing now, not photos, of the Biogenetic Law, was so supposedly from 1869. And once again, here are the photographs, look totally different. Now, it seems to me that there's a different agenda than just proving evolution. In Psalms 139:14, it says, "For I am fearfully and wonderfully made." And in Jeremiah 1:5, it says, "Before you were formed, I knew you." You know, in evolution, if you're an animal, if you consider an animal not a human, especially at the early stages, you can see how easy it is to justify abortion. It's not hard to believe. Okay, but even though God knows that we're wonderfully made, we sin, we break away from God, and you need to repent and follow him. Okay? And he loves you. He will take you in, but you have to follow him. You have to become a Christ follower. All right, now, hopefully you found this helpful, and I appreciate it if you partner up with me and subscribe and give me a thumbs up, and please share it, especially with the younger generation. This is the Bible Ranger, keeping the Bible simple yet rich in content. Thank you very much. Appreciate the questions.